Technology is such a beautiful thing, yet it hates me. At this point right now, it begs the question, am I doing something wrong? Because every time that I buy something new, I put it here, it feels like whether it's a controller, something happens that goes wrong, and I'm a nice person, people. I clean my office, I have an air purifier, I have the surge protectors, the battery backups, I have all of that stuff, but it seems like the more elaborate technology becomes, the more prone it is to it going wrong, and especially in the post-pandemic and during the pandemic world where a lot of stuff is constantly going out of stock, it can be a very frustrating experience. So, hey everybody, Juan here, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while because yeah, I'm not editing or doing any of this in my brand new computer. I'm actually back on my old one, which has seen better days, but hey, it's functioning, so hey baby, it's gonna be okay. I love you. Look, you're helping me with all of this. In this video, I'm gonna catch everybody up on what's happening with my computer, the repair process, but also we're gonna go down memory lane and remember those not so great moments with consoles breaking down and the inevitable question of what happens when older consoles are no longer readily available. It's like, do you have to resort to repairing them yourselves and all of that? So if you like what I do, make sure to subscribe. Go down to the comment section, and the scary question for this video is, what is your worst story with a console or technology breaking down as a whole? And because this is a sad topic, I feel like I just need to hug this pillowy donut because it makes me feel good. I think donuts make everybody feel good, right? So what's been happening? Back in the month of November, I encountered a thing while I was exporting a video on Premiere, one of the videos for the channel, where one of my monitors just blacked out. It just went away because I have two monitors, and then they would just keep resetting each other. Eventually they froze, a Windows update came out, and that was fixed. So I was like, hey, maybe it was just like an update situation. Then comes January. In the month of December, I was doing a lot of like in-person work, trainings, things like that. So I wasn't really gaming a lot in my computer, which sometimes that caused some kind of like a freezing issue. But then in the month of January, I turn on my computer and it just gets stuck at the loading screen. Like just before you see the taskbar, the menu and all that stuff, I had to force shut it off, turn it back on again, and the same thing happened. We went over to safe mode and that would boot up fine, but then we couldn't really pinpoint what was happening. We would go online and some of the people were saying, well, maybe it's a GPU problem, others have problems with RAM, others have problems with driver compatibility. So we did so much troubleshooting. I don't know how many hours my wife and I have devoted to troubleshooting because it's easily been over 20 hours. And we even contacted the people that help us build this computer. And we were like, hey, we know this is not like an isolated issue because I saw a whole lot of people have the exact same problem. Mainly while I was playing games on full screen. I was even doing a stream on Twitch at one point. I'm like, hey, everybody, it's been a long work week. Let's finally, wait a minute. Why is everything frozen? Turn on Streamlabs, so let me change that quick. Stream labels, I meant. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Nicole. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. My computer froze. People, my computer froze. Nicole, me escucha. Can anybody hear me? Yep. Ven pa acá. And then I just got very sad, very upset. And just last weekend, as of the recording of this video, I tried to boot up my computer on a Sunday. Nothing happens. It gets stuck immediately. Luckily, I had a feeling that something like that was going to happen because it did freeze very oddly the night before. So what I actually did is I backed everything up. I backed all my videos, project files, work files, all that stuff, just in case it needed to get reformatted. Luckily, I had that 5 terabyte hard drive because a lot of the footage for this channel, it's like I have over a terabyte of data because sometimes I'll record footage for a game that maybe you won't see it on the channel for months, but I have that footage, right? And I want to make sure I record that in the best quality as possible. So I'm hoping that in the next week or so, I do have my computer back. Luckily, everything's in warranty. I think my concern here is just like technology. Let's take the minds off computers and focus on something like the Nintendo Switch. When you think about the Switch, I think a lot of people fall under the problem of the drifting, right, with the Joy-Cons. And I have a launch switch. I got that in the first month that it came out. And I rarely use the Joy-Cons. I really just don't like them at all, right? So usually I'll use the Pro Controller. But then you see the switch there, and it's because like I've actually been using it while sitting down in my reclining chair. And then it was like 2 to 3 weeks ago, I was playing a game, I stopped moving, and then the character moved a little bit more forward. I'm like, oh no, come on. I didn't want to have to be that person involved with that. We've kind of just become accustomed to there always being some kind of tech problem. And this wasn't really always the case with like earlier consoles, I think, and I've mentioned this before, where it wasn't up until we made the full switch to like disc-based consoles that we started encountering a lot more issues, because there's a lot of factors that can play into that, like a PlayStation 1, 2, 3, all of them. The lens can get dirty, something can get in that, it can stop working. Maybe it's a small fix when the console is relevant, right? When the console is out, like right now, you go out your home, there's probably 20 shops that repair Switch consoles. If you have a PS3 that breaks down, maybe they'll tell you, well, it's maybe not cost effective to do something like that. And I want to just talk about this. I think it's a cathartic experience. Let it all out. Then all of you in the comment section, you can do the same. But I made reference to before that I had a launch PlayStation 3. I didn't get it when it first came out, but luckily I was able to get that type of model, the 60 gigabyte one. And then at that point, I didn't have an Xbox 360. I got one many years later, once they did a couple of revisions regarding the Red Ring of Death. But then I always read online like, oh, the patented yellow light of death. And I'm like, that's not going to happen to me. And then one day I turn on my console and it makes multiple beeping sounds. I'm like, wait a minute. The PS3 doesn't usually make all those beeping sounds. And then I go online and yeah, I actually had that. I called Sony. At that point, I wasn't working, right? And they were repairing PS3 consoles. They weren't just like neglecting the fat models, as people like to say. But I didn't have the money to be able to repair it. So that PS3, I must have had it for about 2 to 3 years before eventually I had a job. And I thought to myself, what the hell? I'll call Sony and see like what they got going for me. And they told me, hey, you give us $100, we will ship you a box, you can put the console in, no shipping fee, and we'll send you a refurbished slim model, which is the one that I still have to date. And even then, I knew what was gonna happen, which is, Juan, you're getting rid of this rare console, because that's one with full like PS1, 2, and PS3 compatibility across the board, and I'm gonna get a slim that's probably gonna work just fine, but you're getting rid of that, and that's exactly what happened. And hey, the Slim has been working, knock on wood. It's that lingering fear of, well, what do you do if you only have one of those consoles? And, you know, even in that scenario, what if Sony just said no? Then you have to go online, and I made reference to this before, where you go to something like eBay, and your mileage may vary, right? Because you can get a seller with a lot of positive reviews, but maybe as the console gets shipped out, because it's an older console, some components can break or something, and that's happened to me. I actually have a video on this channel, I'll link to it at the end of this one, where I got this PS2 and it looked to be in excellent condition. Seller was very responsive. It arrives, and I was actually recording the video. Like, my full intention was, well, I'll just do a video, you know, showcasing the PS2 and talking about why I got that. And then it did not read a disc. There's my game. This is my original copy. Doing my best to collect wrestling games across all generations, so you can see a couple of them right here. It's reading the disc right now, so just give it a second. Come on, man. I like you. The control feels great, because if you don't read the disc, I mean, that kind of ruins. There we go. Okay, so the disc is working. So, yeah, none of us can hear right now because the sound portion of the cables are not plugged in. Oh no. Okay, that's not good. So live in that video, I'm in panic mode, thinking just, what the hell's going on? And even the seller sent me videos demonstrating that it was working, and I wasn't really doubting the seller. The problem was like, yeah, it's an older console, right? Released in the early 2000s. So something breaks, and then you have to go through this painstaking process of shipping it back or not. I was able to fix it temporarily, doing some things, but eventually it stopped working, and it's that PS2 that's right up there. So at least I use it for illustrative purposes, because it reads a disc whenever it feels like it. Another situation that actually happened with the PlayStation console, the PS3, and this is apparently fairly common. I don't know how broad it is, but I have seen multiple threads stating this, so be very mindful of this. One day in this PS3, but the original hard drive of my Slim, I was browsing the PlayStation Store, and then as I go back out, it just kind of fades, it resets, and then I'm just stuck on the wave line, and that's never a good sign. I look online, and that means a corrupted PS3. But then the thing that really frustrates me is apparently it's a wide enough issue that a lot of people have made threads talking about specifically that. Some people like myself, I was able to still have some of the save files because luckily I have PlayStation Now, so I had a lot of that stuff uploaded to the cloud. I put in a new, I think it's like a 1 terabyte hard drive on my PS3, but I haven't gone back to the PlayStation Store. I'm like, I don't want to risk that possibly happening. Like, I already have enough frustrations in life. I think a lot of us don't need, like, oh, what if I go buy a game on the PlayStation Store and it just corrupts my entire hard drive? I don't want to have to go through that entire process, but I don't think it's in Sony's priority to actually update that, even though they are sometimes actually continuously putting out PS3 updates. But I think that's mainly just for like piracy stuff, because it's like a very easy to hack console. Another situation, this is what I mean by I'm a nice guy, people. I help people. I just like to talk. Why does this happen to me? An N64. I bought an N64 multiple years ago to play many of my wrestling games. I want to actually commit this year to doing a video about my wrestling game collection because I have over 50 of them. I said like 2 years ago I was going to work on that, and I never did. But then this CRT TV is actually functional, and I set it up there so I can play GameCube games like the wrestling games on GameCube, through the Wii on that. But then I also popped in my N64, put in WCW, NWO Revenge, and then I'm like, wait a minute, how come everybody has like odd names, just like these weird names? I pop in No Mercy, the menu loads, but you don't get to see any of the font or the music. And apparently that means it's like a faulty console. I tried to fix it because I'm like, it's happening with more than just one cartridge. And something that I have considered is like, I do live in Puerto Rico, fairly close to the beach. So there's many different factors, particularly humidity, right? Humidity is not any of these things' best friend. I can actually pick out a couple of games that I've made references to this before as well. Games from my collection that I played a couple times, put it back, didn't touch for months, and then I put them in something like my PS2. I have a copy of The Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, which is like a Final Fantasy X clone, and then it wouldn't work. And apparently it's due to sometimes older discs develop mold, which even that in itself is a horrific conversation for somebody that lives in the Caribbean, right? That in 50 years' time, a lot of these games may not necessarily work. I know Blu-ray discs, like on the PS3 and all that stuff, are fortunately a little bit more stable, but it does beg that horrific question of what happens with our physical media, right? I've talked about this a lot last year, and crazily enough, my video about digital versus physical media, there's a frame. I want to be mindful because I don't want to be involved in any of this crazy GameStop stuff happening. But one of the more popular YouTubers that's apparently like a millionaire or something, that had something to do with the GameStop stock thing, was bringing up multiple YouTube channels talking about physical versus digital media. My face shows up in that video for like 20 seconds. I'm just like, that is the weirdest thing that's ever happened, and a couple of you have actually pointed that out, so thank you, because that video happened like 6-7 months ago, and I just found out about that recently. But not gonna lie, it's kind of soured me a little bit on physical collecting, because yeah, this video spiraled out of my computer working, and even that in itself, that computer doesn't even have a DVD or a Blu-ray drive, because I've just become accustomed to something like Steam, and I made reference to, yeah, like the hard drives can become corrupted. I feel like it's like a little bit easier. And I think the emotional attachment, and let me know what you all think about this. I think this is like the real meat and potatoes of the conversation. The emotional component that you have or attachment to anything on a digital space, game that you download, isn't nearly the same as the game that you have in your collection, because even like a scratch on the box, I think that tells a story, right? When that game stops working or the console stops working, and that console can have scratches to like, hey, that takes me back to when I was 10 years old, or this memory card has a save back from like 2005 or something. That's like an emotional attachment that, yeah, you can buy another console, but it's not quite the same, right? And you may be wondering just where am I going with this conversation? I think I'm going into two different topics. So the first one is I want to make sure that I have at least two of every console that I own, just in case. I feel like it's like just just to reduce the anxiety in my mind, body, and spirit or something like that. Have two Wii U's, because I know the Wii U's can become faulty. Have just two PS2s that are fully functional. I made reference to the fact that I recently won a modified PS2 with a built-in hard drive. Luckily, I was able to fix my wife's PS3, which for a very long time wasn't reading any controller, but now it is. I was able to just like reformat it. It's now fresh and functional, and it's also a slim one. And I want to eventually get like another 360, just because I think that as time goes on, and as the PS5 generation continues to progress and the Xbox Series X, we've already seen the increase in price of things like the Wii U, and I think the PS3 is not going to be too far off. So I think that's going to be one thing, and something tied to it is also just modding consoles. Like I mentioned, I have a modded PS2 with a built-in hard drive. I want to get a second Wii U, so I leave this one vanilla, like just non-modded. And then the other one I do want to modify just in case eventually the disk drive stops working. It's like, hey, I can actually use my games. It's weird, and I think that this is why I'm so interested in emulation and modding. It really is a video game preservation. Like whether you support it or not, Sony's not putting out a PlayStation 3 2021 edition, right? That you can still just pop in your new consoles. And I made reference to this before. You can still play your old DVDs on a PS3, on a PS2, on most consoles. So there's this weird double standard between consoles and video games in general, and the way that other media is portrayed. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is this is where I really do begin to value the mini consoles like the Super Nintendo Classic, PS1, Commodore 64, Sega Genesis. I know they're not one-to-one like the original console. There's like a minor sound delay, but we don't get new versions of older devices, kind of like we do with other technology. So I think that from a preservation standpoint, it's kind of nice that you can buy just this thing that contains multiple games. You can modify it, put more, and I do see it as a historical piece. Like, how many people have to invest hundreds upon hundreds of dollars to get something like a Super Nintendo or a GameCube to look really nice on a high-definition television, where you can just buy a Super Nintendo Classic, and once again, it's not one-to-one. It's going to vary in some things, but generally speaking, you get a pretty satisfying experience. And I really do think that my situation with my computer, problems with consoles, has just made me appreciate the fact that in 100 years' time, we will maybe be talking about, first of all, I won't be alive, which is a sad conversation to have, but I don't think anybody's going to have like a fully functional PS1. We may have a RetroPie that is shelled inside a PS1 console, right? But let's appreciate what we have. Let's appreciate what we have when it comes to video games right now, whether it's an N64, something like a Dreamcast. I really do want to value all of that and eventually mod my consoles. Like I know the Dreamcast has this just beautiful HDMI solution, and I think eventually they're going to be doing something like that with the PlayStation 2. So I just want to be able to preserve, take care of my consoles, and maybe even learn how to clean them properly. Because I've tried it, but I'm so bad at all this stuff. Like, hell, I wasn't even like doing anything with the computer and it stopped working. Can you imagine like me opening that damn thing up and trying to like physically fix something? I guess these hands are made for gaming, not for fixing. But hopefully you appreciated this rant, this just like cathartic experience. I needed to get this out, and I want to thank all of you, right? Like I wrote on the community page that this was happening, and a lot of you just said, hey, take your time. But this channel is really helpful for me. An upcoming video is going to be specifically me talking about gaming and mental health. And in the past 2 weeks where I've not been able to produce what I want because I run into problems with this computer, right? And it just takes a little bit longer to edit. And I think it's just like when you have something that you're used to and it gets taken away from you, you kind of like lose that inspiration a bit. And it's just reminded me how important streaming and working on this channel is. It's truly something that is beneficial to my mental health. Looking forward to your comments and all of that stuff. So thank you so much for being patient with me. The scheduling is going to be all over the place, but I wanted to make sure to at least be real and authentic with all of you. And hopefully you can relate with my experience and you can share something that you've gone through similar to this, hopefully, so I don't feel alone in the comments. So as I mentioned, you can check this out right now, my video with the broken PlayStation 2. And if you like what I do, make sure to subscribe, give me that thumbs up, and up until next time, thank you for watching, supporting, and let's hope that the computer gets repaired. And also, I grew a mustache in this time just because. So I went from no facial hair, or facial hair to no facial hair, to now this.